can you just paint us a little bit of a picture? Like, what was the writing room back when you guys were you smoking inside? Was there a coffee machine? Like, what was it like? And did you ever think 40 years later, Shia LaBeouf is going to be in your live action version? You know what I'm saying? Like, did you ever imagine when you got, sorry, I don't mean to hurt anybody, when you started this, like, what it would be like? You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can answer that. A little bit I can answer that. I mean, we didn't have writing rooms quite like I imagine them being now, but we did have times, we had three different things that we categorized as that. One was for the third season of Transformers, we just did a cattle call of everybody that written Transformers and just said, hey, here's what we're doing, because we knew we're taking the show somewhere it hadn't really been, certainly before the movie. Probably the last, quarter of second season was a hint where we were going, but because it was aware of the movie. So we invited a bunch of people over. So we had that, and we had a Bible, we had a bunch of springboards, and what we were asking writers for, because in that case, the freelance writers, they may call you up and you can talk to them if you're a story editor or producer or something, talk to them for hours about it. But by and large, we didn't, they didn't really come in and meet, with us as a group for long periods of time. It wasn't like you would imagine a writer's room.
It was like pretty hands off.
Because the individual story editors kind of wrangled the individual episodes and the writers. There was overlap and there was handoffs and stuff. But I mean, what it was like, with us just sitting around in Sunbow, where we were all writers and other things. It was very, very cooperative, very collaborative, very sort of problem solving. And Steve Gerber kind of sat in the center of a lot of it, even though he was never technically on Transformers. But he would just kind of laugh, and it got to be, in good moments, it got to be about us sort of kind of crack each other up, but it wasn't like we were doing comedies. But it was just like, that's a really interesting idea. And we would ask, and this is good for any writer, we would ask people to come back. We'd give one sentence, and we'd say, come back with 3, and it can be a paragraph, we don't care how much it is, different takes on this springboard. The Decepticons decide to turn, all oil into energon and, whatever. They invent a weather machine. And inevitably what people do is their first thing they come back would be down the center of the bowling alley, just what you think the episode's going to be.
Sure.
And then the second one would come back would be that, but with some major wrinkle in it. I mean, this is my experience, and everybody else can have different experiences and tell them. The third one would be like, really? A third one? And it would be like the wild kind of sometimes sarcastic and contemptuous take saying, what are you asking us to do? And I would say the odds were exactly 33, 33, 33 that we would pick first, second, or third. And sometimes the third one would be so wild, or sometimes they'd unshackled all the stuff and you got to something really good, or they got it that we didn't really literally mean Cobra had to make a weather changing machine.
Right. Or put your oar in the water,
maybe sometimes trampoline off their own.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, Flint, you got a new game you're working on with your buddy Paul Dini, right?
Oh, yes, I am, yes. Yeah, thank you very much for the pitch. Okay, yeah. If anybody's bored afterwards, come find us. I'm not sure we're doing this, but we're doing Captain Trademark, which is the thing Paul and I wrote back in like '84. I think we were still at Lucasfilm when we started it. But it's really a composite of a bunch of different characters and situations we came up with while we were being hired by every fly-by-night organization in town, which we would still do even though we were working at Sunbow and Lucasfilm and stuff like that. So anyway, and we think it's really fun, and it's definitely of the same world as Transformers and Joe.
We had a very loose atmosphere there. The pressure to turn out completed scripts was intense, but the actual working was very loose and fluid. And we had a female staffer, who I will not name for obvious reasons, who used to like to go up at lunchtime up on the roof and sunbathe. And one day, the phone company guy shows up, says they've got to do something with the phone system. This is back in pre-cellular days. And they asked someone, and who was that, Michael? I can't remember. They asked them where the phone junction box was, and the person said, up on the roof. And the next thing we knew, we heard this loud scream, and the guy comes down with a red face, and our staffer following shortly behind, pulling her clothes on. Don't ever do that again, she said. So that's the kind of atmosphere that it was at Sunbow West.
Yeah, I think I was totally unaware of that. Was that, somebody who later worked with Frank and Steve and I?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Oh, wow.
All right, so I think we have time for one very quick question if we're short. So last question.
Were there any episodes of Transformers where the original concept or idea was something you had carried from a previous work that you hadn't gotten to write?
Well, Carnage in C Minor's ultimate origin was a pitch I made about a decade earlier to Lou Scheimer at Filmation. I suggested doing a superhero whose power came from music, and Lou said, shut up, and never went anywhere. And then when we needed a script in a hurry, I said, well, what about somebody who uses magic as a power? I mean, not magic, music as a power. And they said, yeah, can you get it written by Friday? And I said, yeah, sure. And that's where Carnage in C Minor came from.
For me, it was, again, my very first script, The Gambler. I had, in between Ruby Spears and Sunbow, I wrote one episode of Gobots. And I don't remember the title of the show, but it was the exact same story, but the story editors changed it enough that I didn't really recognize it anymore. So in my pitch to Bryce Malick, who was the early story editor on Transformers, I forget how many premises he wanted me to pitch him, whether it was 3 or 5 or whatever, but I was one short. So I thought, well, I'll just throw in whatever my Gobot story was and change it to Transformers, thinking, not that he would pick it, but I just fulfilled my agreement with him of how many stories to pitch, and of course, that's the one he liked, and that's the one he picked. But I don't even know if I don't remember the name of the Gobots script and how far off it is from The Gambler at all. But I felt like I was kind of cheating, but I was desperate to come up with one last story.
One problem I had, I was writing Transformers, Gobots, and Mighty Orbots at the same time. And there were such similar shows that I would get them mixed up in my mind. And I remember bringing in one Gobot script, or maybe it was one Transformers script, but I had the planets and the character names interchanged from one script to the other, from one show to the other, and I had to do those over again. So it could get very confusing when you're knocking these things out really fast simultaneously.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was, are we done? You can inject
If you got a quick response, yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, nothing I ever say is quick. Basically, yeah, I mean, the scripts I did always happened in some kind of crisis. I mean, like, I just wanted to do it, Most Dangerous Game, and that Buzz and I, inside 2 days, did Prime Target, which I actually came out pretty happy with it. It's a weird episode, but I tended to write weird episodes, and I would get assignments for G.I. Joe from Jay Bacall, like, let's do something where we don't blow up the headquarters at the end. I mean, just kind of different. Let's set it like somewhere different, and Games Master came out of that. Let's set it at Candyland, but it was really about the Dungeon and Dragon Mansion I was working out of at that moment. Then Skeletons in the Closet, I'd always wanted to do Lovecraft, like hardcore, and I mean, I always thought of Lady J as kind of being Linda, so I sort of wrote that stuff in there, and then Oda Cobra was like, Jay saying, let's just have wherever Cobra's plot is, or whatever it is, it's not a weapon of mass destruction and all that. I thought, how about an aphrodisiac, And it was like, well, I mean, Flint, this is kind of, PG rated at most. And I said nothing, you're not going to see anything funky. And so it was about that, which oddly enough is I don't know what my favorite episode I ever wrote for these guys. That's my favorite episode that everybody else hated, but I still like that one a lot.
All right, let's give a big TFcon thank you to our guests. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much for being here. And fans, please feel free to join us for the next panel, which is another G1 voice actor panel, Q&A. Thank you so much. We'll see you soon.